We're very excited to and appreciate Department of Defense and their work on sustainable procurement. And David Osceola has been working on sustainability for Department of Defense, and he, as you said, thank you, David, for taking Ron Buchholz's phone calls all those years. And George Handy has also a seasoned bio-based person. And then we have Andy Chavan from Defense Logistics Aviation. So we're going to have a good voice there. And then finally, we really appreciate biosynthetic technologies coming. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to George, and thank you for moderating.
Thank you, Karen, and a shout out to Karen as well for organizing these bio-based stakeholders events, because I think so many of us have had the opportunity to meet at these events and share the information, the stories, the successes, the challenges that we've all had over the years. And I can go back to the first year of these meetings and go back to the 2002 Farm Bill, of which was a real driver to implement some of these opportunities and demonstrations with the Department of Defense. And I think Dave will be able to speak well to how the challenge was laid out by the 2002 Farm Bill, the establishment of the BioPreferred program, and how the Department of Defense stood up and tried to answer that challenge and evaluate products and put them out into the field and test them and try them to see where they could fit, where they could support the warfighter, the civilians, the artisans that work for the Department of Defense, and provide a mission benefit. And I think Dave will give us a good overview of how those programs were established and where we've gone and where we'd like to go. And then we have Andy Chaban at DLA, Aviation specifically, where they manage several of the items that are bio-based products. And we have some examples of the slide I think we're going to have up there. I don't know, Mike, if we can get maybe the next, do we just hit the next? Little arrow down. There we go. Okay, so these are just a snapshot of a few pictures of some demonstrations that we've conducted over the last previous years of products that demonstrations involve bio-based products, and I'll let Dave speak and Andy speak to those specifically. But it has been an opportunity to put the products in the hands of the end users and really let them try them, feel them, and ensure that they have performance and meet the military's need. And what better proving ground for not only the Department of Defense but all federal agencies to see if a product will work for the Department of Defense. It'll work for NASA, as we have, and coming up after us is NASA and their experiences with working with Dave and Andy and ourselves on other products. And we've had Homeland Security, Postal Service, and we're looking to expand those. But I don't want to steal Dave's thunder. And then we'll also have Jake at speaking to a successful demonstration, and he's been a partner. And without the actual technologies that have been developed with USDA and a bio-based product, without those technologies, this program really doesn't exist. And I can't understate the importance of obviously having successful technologies to bring forward. And we thank all of the participants here on the panel. With that, I'll just turn it over to Dave.
Thanks, George. Like George said, I'm David Osceola. I'm with the Office of the Secretary of Defense for Sustainment. Just a little bit about DoD in case you're not familiar with our organization. We talked about how large the federal government is. Well, DoD is by far the largest agency in the federal government. We have about three military departments, which you're all familiar with, which Army, Navy, Air Force, and Navy means Navy and Marine Corps. But there's also 28 other DoD components, like large organizations such as DLA, the Missile Defense Agency, Defense Intelligence Agency, and on and on and on. So we are a really, really large organization. We have about 3 million employees, which is probably the country's biggest. We are 523 installations, those are large military installations. We have over 300,000 buildings, which is about 1.3 billion square feet. Over 197,000 non-tactical vehicles, so that would exclude things like aircraft and submarines and tanks, so just their non-tactical vehicles. We have 26 million acres of land, and we operate in 5,000 locations worldwide. And we spend, just on goods and services, a little over $350 billion annually. And just last year, we spent $3.5 billion on installation energy. That doesn't count the fuel that we use to fly our aircraft or steamer ships and things like that. So we use a lot, we spend a lot, and we need to do a better job or continue to improve on how we spend those resources. We're the Department of Defense. We're not the Department of War. We are here to defend our interests, protect our people, and work with our allies to protect the nation and the world that we work and operate in. To do that, though, we got to have resources. We got to have air, land, and water, energy. We need to be able to train as we fight, and we need to have those resources available. We need to also have the man-made resources available to us, the products, the goods, and services we need to do our job, do our business. And so why we look at sustainability as a very excellent opportunity for us to continue to have those resources available. It's really important to us. I mean, energy and water are two commodities that we need in our front lines. And the more we can reduce our dependence on energy or our dependence on water, if you've ever seen a convoy, it takes energy to the front lines. It's a long, dangerous job, especially in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. So if we can minimize the need to move those resources to the front line, we're going to save lives. So that's really important to us in DoD. There's a lot of other mission benefits for implementing alternatives across the department. I mean, availability of resources. We operate, like I said, all around the world, and some of the restrictions that are facing us, especially in Europe, European Union, these REACH restrictions, and others that are making it harder and harder to get our products and services. So we need to make sure that we have the availability. We also need to ensure that we can reduce costs. Part of why I'm so excited about this program is it's a small part of our bigger sustainability efforts within DoD, but it's been one that's been able to show quite a bit of dividends. It's the Sustainable Product Demonstration Program, and this is one that we kicked off a while back with DLA funding, and Andy may talk a little bit more about that, but it's one that's gotten a lot of interest, both in Congress and by the White House. So it's kind of interesting that both the White House and Congress are in agreement on something. But it really is been very valuable, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we're really, like I said, it's more of a mission imperative for us. So, we can save money, we can improve performance, we can show that these products in many cases work better than the current, let's say, petroleum-based products. And we continue to have availability of resources. And then the life cycle costs are much cheaper. So this is just a few examples of some that we've been working on for several years now, and we got a program in place now. We're going to continue to work on demonstrating products at our DoD installations. And like George mentioned, we want to broaden that partnership with all federal agencies. The White House Council on Environmental Quality is very interested in us broadening this program to include other agencies. But it's one that helps us meet a mission need. So we look at this as an opportunity, and we would love to partner with the folks out there. And like I mentioned to Ms. Brand, when USDA calls us up and say, we have something that could work, and why isn't DoD implementing it? Or if DoD could implement it, we'd be able to move it across the federal family. So we take that seriously, and we've been able to prove some of these things. So just a couple examples. These are some bio-based demos that we conducted on absorbents, 2-cycle and 4-cycle engine oils, hydraulic fluids, greases, penetrating lubricants, road marking paint. That was the one that USDA brought to our attention. CLP, which is a cleaner lubricant and preservative for firearms, both medium and small caliber firearms, and even bio-based food service where we've done at various installations. And these are the installations here, so at the top left, that's Marine Corps 29 Palms, where we demonstrated the absorbents. In the middle there, that's Fort Bragg, where we demonstrated the cleaner lubricant and preservative, and that's a really excellent story. I'd like to touch on that a little bit more. On the far upper right, that's Mountain Warfare Training Center, where we demonstrated bio-based hydraulic fluids. On the middle left, it's the Joint Base Lewis McChord, where that's where we did the road marking paint. In the middle right, that's South Carolina Army National Guard, where we did the penetrating lubricants. Lower left is F.E. Warren, where we did the bio-based synthetic motor oil, and I think you'll hear more about that. And then in the bottom middle, it's Edwards Air Force Base, where with NASA, we partnered with NASA Armstrong Flight Research Center, and then the far right, that's actually the Pentagon. That's the soy back entrance mats at many of the entrances in the Pentagon, which was kind of exciting to be walking around my office building and seeing actual bio-based products in use. So, I'm going to turn it over to Andy at DLA, but just to leave you with this, we would like to partner with industry. We look at industry as kind of a leader in this space, which you can help drive federal government change and continue to knock on our doors. It's not easy to work with the Defense Department or any of the federal agencies for that matter. There's a lot of bureaucracy. We've tried to break down some of that bureaucracy. I mean, within DoD, for example, we issued a DoD instruction on the procurement of sustainable goods and services. And if you know how the Defense Department works, directives and instructions, because we're a command and control organization, are how we all operate. And we're working with other federal agencies to put together a federal acquisition regulation on procurement of good and sustainable acquisition. And so when that comes to fruition, hopefully within a year or so, that will actually be another opportunity for us to infuse bio-based products within our procurement space. And again, so I'll be here the rest of the day, and if you'd like to talk more, I'd love to talk to you about opportunities to partner with you. Thanks.
So anything and everything that Dave has mentioned, if not 100%, about 98 to 99% of the funding came from our office. So what is the Defense Logistics Agency? We are a global enterprise, and when I give presentation, actually, and people laugh at me, I'll say we are the Walmart of the military. So anything and everything the uniformed officer requires or needs, both in peacetime and wartime, is procured and purchased through DLA Aviation. So what is my branch and what we do? Simply put, we actually give money out. So how do we play as a role in all of this? How do we support the USDA? How do we support the farmers? So anything and everything that is being used in the military has to be tested, has to be evaluated, has to be validated. So a requirement comes into our office, and I'll give you a prime example, and the gentleman is sitting right next to me, is the bio-based engine oil. So the requirement came in that we would like to test and evaluate a product, and the military services did not have the funding because, it cost, manpower, the materials, in all of that. So they came to my office with a requirement that we'd like to test this product. We funded the bio-based engine oil, and it has to be tested against conventional oil, and it has to be tested also against a re-refined oil. And I'm going to touch bases on some actually of the energy, because some of the questions were asked. The housing, more efficient doors or more efficient windows, or energy in general. So the way DLA, Defense Logistics Agency, works is that you have 4 field level activities. So you have DLA Aviation, and that's where I work at in Richmond, Virginia. So anything and everything that has to do with aviation parts, and we manage a federal supply class. Then you have Philadelphia, then you have Columbus, then you have Fort Belvoir, which is energy. So DLA Aviation, over the course of the years, we have funded projects. The bio-based penetrants, the bio-based sorbents, the bio-based engine oil. So once a product is tested and it meets performance criteria, and we don't set, DLA Aviation does not set the performance criteria, the military services are the one that set the performance criteria. Once it meets the performance criteria, then it makes it into the supply chain. So with the bio-based engine oils, companies participated in the study, and we had actually a whole fleet of the Air Force, Army, Navy, NASA, Department of Homeland Security. We even had the United States Postal Service participated in the study. Now, the national stock numbers are established. Then the next question is, well, so what? I mean, so how do you push this product among the services so they can buy the product? Well, I don't know the answer to that. So I'm going back to my management, and I think that when a requisition hits, that if there is a bio-preferred product, that product actually is displayed, and if it is a requirement for them to buy the product, then they are required to buy the product. There has to be more of an enforcement, if I may say an enforcement, to actually enforce the military services, federal agencies, that when there is a green product, an alternative for that product, to make it through the requisition line and for it to be procured. The other challenge that I have, and I brought it up to management, and I'm not going to take a whole lot of time, is that we are limited in what my branch, we are limited in what we fund. So we fund projects that fall under the management of DLA Aviation. So when things come to my office that it had to deal with energy, let's say an alternative to jet fuel, a bio-based product, I am restricted. So what I'd like is, and I don't know how maybe your office, the USDA, can push this. What I'd like to see is participation actually from other field level activities, from Fort Belvoir, from Columbus, from Philadelphia, so we can broaden the horizon, so we can fund projects. Because I tell you, and I mean, I've heard discussions, anything and everything, and I may be wrong, but I hope that I'm not wrong. The United States government is not going to buy just because somebody comes to them and say, well, I have a bio-based product. This bio-based product, regardless what it is, if it is energy doors, energy windows, garbage disposals, and what have you, it has to be tested. It had to be evaluated. And some of these services do not have the funding for it. So that's where they come and they seek our support. And that's when we come out actually and we provide the funding. I mean, we do more than that, but mainly it is the funding. We do the technical support, we do the project management. So we take a whole lot of the managerial burden of the installation itself. And with that, I think that I rambled a whole lot, so I'm going to turn it over to Jake.
Thanks, Andy. And Jake, is one of the most successful product demonstration programs. And we also have Boyd Eifling in the back from the sorbent demonstrations that we've done over the years, and another very successful product. So I just want to take your time afterwards to speak with Jake and Andy and Dave and Boyd about the demonstration programs. And obviously, our NASA counterparts are here as well, so they'll follow us up with some of their successful demonstrations. But I just want to point out that, this is a great opportunity to interact and share these ideas. And Jake, I want to thank you again for participating over the past almost 3 years now with providing the motor oils and participating in the demonstration. And we'd like to hear a little bit about your specific success and affiliation with the demonstration program and how it's worked for you.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, this is a topic I feel very passionate about, sustainability, so it's fun to be part of the conversation. So I feel honored to be up here on stage and to be able to kind of give my thoughts. Really what I want to talk about and kind of have the discussion be about is kind of our experience and what it's been like to be on my side. There's a few people in the room that are kind of on this side as far as discussions go today. I'm the first to really represent the technology and the product side of the equation. And there's a lot that goes into trying to solve these problems. We're looking at world problems and seeing, well, what's going on? How do we manage sustainability? A lot of discussions today have been how to help people like us get our products out. But there's a lot that goes into the innovation and discovery and trying to figure out how do we solve these problems. So my role in this is I was one of the founders of our company. Our product is a performance bio-based oil. So one example of an application is a motor oil. We can use this oil in a lot of applications, but really the genesis and desire for this type of product was looking at bio-based oils and where they're being used and where they can't be used. And so motor oil is a place that's kind of been a struggle. You can't really just put a vegetable oil into an engine and think it's going to survive. And so when you're trying to compete with products, you need to compete also on performance. And so a lot of work went into how do we make a vegetable oil perform like a high-performance mineral synthetic oil. And so we were able to come up with some solutions to that. Our technology actually was first discovered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So this kind of comes from the government to us. We've been commercializing and helping out, work very closely with the government, and now kind of back here in this conversation trying to now use resources to get it back out. But the idea of the motor oil was looking at one, greenhouse gases. So we're talking a lot about sustainability from the standpoint of greenhouse gases, but one that's not talked about as much that I feel very passionate about is actually water pollution. So when you're talking about lubricants, a lot of lubricants end up in waterways, and there's a lot of toxicity and issues that go with that. So being able to have an oil that's biodegradable, yet still performs, and not only addresses greenhouse gas issues, but addresses toxicity issues or pollution issues around the world. Motor oil being one of the biggest contributors to water pollution. And so when we sat down to try to make the motor oil, the idea was let's try to make a performance motor oil. Let's make something that's as good as what people are using. And we were very successful at being able to do that. So we were able to get API certification. So American Petroleum Institute approved our product, even though it was a bio-based product. There's a lot of engine testing that you have to do. There's a lot of studies and field trials that we do that we're able to do with Department of Defense. And I've heard a few people talk about over the last week or so, a common conversation is you can't just simply meet the minimum requirements of any specification. Most people expect something better. Motor oil is like that. So when we got approval for the API certification, the American Petroleum Institute certification for the motor oil, when we did the engine testing, the goal wasn't to just be good enough. It was to really perform well. And so as an example, we have an engine here. This is from a field trial we did in Las Vegas over a couple of years. It's about 150,000 miles. But one thing that you'll notice is the two pieces of equipment up here, one has a lot of varnish, so it has an amber hue to it. The other one looks brand new. So even after 2 years of being run constantly for 150,000 miles, our technology was able to keep the engine still looking pristine. One of the benefits of the technology is it's very clean. It holds deposits. It doesn't deposit them into the engine. And so there's some performance attributes that you get. So when we did the API certification engine testing, one thing that they test is engine cleanliness. And the requirement is fairly low. And so you get a rating of 0 to 10, 10 being brand new, it looks fantastic. 0 would be that the engine looks horrible. You really only need to get about a 4, 4.5 rating to pass the test. It's not very high. Ours came in at over 8. The engine still looked fantastic, right? So we were able to beat that test. The next test was a wear test. How does the engine look? What kind of wear are you getting? You can get 90 microns of wear. We got 1 micron of wear. We did a fuel economy test. So we had a 5W30 motor oil. We did the test, and it passed the 5W20 fuel economy specifications. Right, so this was getting way better results than what you had to get to be able to pass the test. That led to the field trial that we did with the Department of Defense. They saw some of the data and invited us to participate. And so for the last 3 years or so, we've been participating in that, and it's gone really well. So we're at a point now where we've solved the problem. We found a solution to something that we identified as being an issue, and the next step is simply making it available, trying to get it out there, making sure that awareness is out there so you guys know that the technology exists. You know who to talk to so that you can buy the motor oil and use it. Really something that could be helpful for us, just kind of talking about forward thinking and where we're going from here. We've had a lot of support getting to where we are, right? So everything's kind of a group effort. I take no credit as trying to say that we solve this by ourselves. This really is a cumulative effort of a lot of people who participated to kind of get us to where we are. The next step, though, is really validating the desire for it, right? So a lot of the programs we've talked about to this point are funding to help us build manufacturing, or it's field trials to show that it works. The final piece of that whole equation is that someone wants it, right? So if someone's willing to buy it, that's the ultimate test that someone will really kind of put their name on it, that they want this product. So one thing that I would recommend, or at least ask, is trying to figure out at this point, now that we've proven that it works, is where can we potentially try to use it? Any kind of future funding or opportunities might even be small demonstrations or trials, but being able to show that the government wants this product validates all the work that kind of went into it. And so we work with a lot of people in industry. It's been very successful. There's a lot of people interested in our technology. But really, being able to work with you to be able to benefit from the work that we've done feels good. As an example, I run this in my vehicle. It's fantastic. I love having it in my vehicle. It'd be hard for me to get up here and promote it and talk about it and be real passionate about it if I didn't even use it myself. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing, right? It's hard to be passionate about it if you don't even use it. So the government's put so much effort into this and worked with us. In the end, if you don't use it, then it doesn't really validate your interest. So that would be kind of the last piece I'd add to that.
I'm going to add one other thing. So when a product comes in for testing and evaluation, for it to be accepted to the federal supply chain, it also has to be cost effective. So how we determine, how do we actually value the cost effectiveness of a product? It is actually throughout the life cycle of the product. So initially, and I'll tell this through my presentation, so initially a product is evaluated or it's looked at and it's pricier than conventional product. And that does not steer us away as a federal government because the study is throughout the life cycle. Now, the other thing also that we have to keep in mind is availability. Well, is it available? So demand and supply. Is the manufacturer actually able to supply the demand of the federal government? So there is a whole lot of factors that goes in for a product actually to make it into the supply chain. But yes, truly, it has to meet performance criteria. So it has to perform the same or even better than what we call a brown product. It has to be cost effective. It has to be available. So when a requisition comes in for purchase, it's there available for them to buy it.
I think another point is the displacement of petroleum products too, that this is offering the 30% bio-based content of the motor oil is a huge issue. If you transition the federal fleet over to bio-based motor oils, you'd have a 30% reduction in petroleum consumption in your motor oil alone. That's hard to achieve in a single event with a single product. And the availability and the drop-in replacement capability of this fuel or this oil is a tremendous opportunity there. But I think the outreach and the awareness and success stories and getting the press releases out there, getting information out about this particular story, the Boyd sorbents in the back, Synlon, get these success stories out there and promote them, make them available, and create the awareness. Or USDA using these types of products in their facilities, I think, is another, or vehicles is another opportunity. Dave?
So, yeah, I want to leave some time for questions. I know we're probably getting really short on time, but I do want to say, our Deputy Secretary of Defense, previous Deputy Secretary of Defense, and others have gone on record to say energy security is national security, and so the less dependent we are on foreign sources of energy, whether it be petroleum or anything else, is a national security imperative. So looking at bio-based or bio-preferred and opportunities to move away from petroleum is big to the defense of national security of our country. That being said, does anyone have, can we open up for questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Any questions from the field?
I've got probably more of a statement than I do a question, but some numbers that you have brought up, 1.3 billion square feet of facilities. If 10% of those facilities used carpeting, and we had 7% of the purchases of those, it would run our plant 8 hours a day for a month. That's the type impact that these type products can have. I know that we had some products that were specified for military housing. Don't know what those numbers are. It wasn't big. But those are the type impacts that the federal government could have with their purchase power if they backed us. Using those numbers to relate to the farmers, it would mean about 2.5 million pounds of soy polyol through our products. But just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
No, that's a great point. And, previous executive orders have recognized the purchase power of the federal government. And again, all agencies combined is quite impressive. DoD, of course, being the biggest. Seems to be we have the most marks on our back, targets from our folks at OMB and others that keep track of how well we do in these things. And for our energy goals, for example, if DoD doesn't meet the energy goals, the federal government doesn't meet the energy goals. I mean, that's the kind of activity that we have, and we are pushing it, I think, more and more, and with the support of other agencies, with the White House, in this case, USDA, I think we're going to make some good strides going forward.
I think we have another question.
Yes, thank you. David, Andy, just a quick question for you. For companies that want to pursue additional opportunities through DoD, how would you suggest that we go about that? Where would be the point of entry? Typically, it would not be with either of you two gentlemen, or maybe that it is, but where would we begin to look at those things with technology panels for evaluation, et cetera?
Right. So Congress awarded us, my program, a couple $1 million in 18, 19, and 20 in the budget. And so I have resources to do demonstrations. So my program, well, one of my programs, but this one I'm talking about, is to prove performance. Really is like, how do the products work? Because if they're not going to work or can't perform, we're not going to be able to use them. And then to try to myth bust greenwashing and other things. And so George is my program manager. You can talk to him if you have something that might meet a DoD need, or if it's another federal agency. We're going on record to say we'd like to work with other federal agencies. So usually, though, if it's a DoD installation, it pretty much covers the gamut. I mean, we have everything. It's a city, right? So everything on an installation pretty much is covered most places. Plus, everything, unique things like firearms and airplanes that fly fast and stuff. So, please see George if you have an interest. That's what we're here to talk to you about later on. And then once it goes through the process in the system, to actually get into the DoD system, it has to go through DLA or GSA to be actually in the stock system. Or you can maybe do a local purchase. But
So I'm going to add a little bit to it to answer your question. So the very first thing what you need to do actually is identify a requirement. So without a requirement, there is no need for the product. So if you approach the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, the federal agencies, and you work with them on defining a requirement, if there is a requirement, there is a need. Without a requirement, there is no need. So that is the very first step. After the requirement is identified, then the next phase comes in, well, let's test, evaluate, and validate the product. And once that product goes through the channel of the testing, evaluation, and validation, then if it meets the performance criteria, then that's how your product makes it into the global purchase power of the Department of Defense.
And as Dave said, you can stop by and see me later, but obviously there's a lot of commercial applications that will give you the idea that there will be military applications. From Dave's standpoint, it is a city. There's functionality of all the support equipment, facilities, and infrastructure, energy to building management. So let's have a conversation and see where the needs are. I think you'll find that we can help you find that contact within the military to be interested to demonstrate the product.
yeah, one more point I want to make too. So we're demonstrating product lines. We need to have we look not to have a sole source. We need to avoid sole source. So we'll demonstrate products and then qualify products based on those demonstrations. So we're not putting one company over another company in this perspective. Actually the CLP is interesting because this is it's a cleaner lubricant and preservative for medium and small caliber firearms that we were demonstrating. It's biobased CLP, so it's less harmful to the soldier or the Marine that's firing those weapons, and especially the trainers that are around this kind of stuff all day long. It works better. We're working with Navy SEALs on this early on. They took me out of a firing range outside of San Diego someplace. They drove me. They didn't blindfold me.
Someplace, yeah, okay.
But it was up, it wasn't, let me put it this way, oh, there's a camera, so I better not say anything more. But anyway, I had to fire some weapons from 100 yards, 300 yards, 500 yards out, and actually,
And you hit him.
I hit them, yeah, and I don't fire. But anyway, it's bio-based, and it works better, and they told me this, the snipers they are, so they're more accurate with their first shot than they would be with petroleum-based. And for them, it wasn't about being bio-based, it was about I can get further back from the bad guy that's shooting at me. And so that's why they were interested in it. So we've been implementing it. We only had one that qualified, and we had some crazy requirements. I mean, I had to meet some cold weather temperature stuff that it's like 65 below Celsius. And it just because that was a spec from 1950s, and I think it went into aircraft that were flying high and it was really cold. Anyway, we were able to work with the spec owners, who the gentleman who owned the specification, to modify it and to actually qualify a product. And now that there's more than one qualified, we can get into the system and start actually procuring this product.
Great panel. We have to move on. I'd like to thank everyone for your presentation this morning.